if we don't share what we understand, how will the other person know that we actually understand their world?
Exactly, yes. We're back to we can't mind read.
We can't mind read. The last episode, we really started to have a look at the communication model, starting to have a look at from the sender and to the receiver, and the 8 steps in one communication process, and actually how complicated communication is, and that communication can go off really in any one of these 8 steps.
It's quite remarkable that we can communicate in the first place, given
Yes.
that there's so many possibilities for miscommunication to occur.
Yes, yeah. Now, so I think for today, then, if we start to have a look at how to, using the communication model, how to actually enter someone else's frame of reference, or how to understand. How do you understand someone else's frame of reference?
What you've just noted here about frame reference is key, because all of communication involves understanding the frame reference of the other, and it in fact involves establishing a shared frame of reference. But let's deal with one at a time.
Okay.
So yes, how to enter the frame of reference would understand the frame of reference of the other. In a way, we are so sophisticated in our communication, and there's so many different nuances. But by and large, we've only got 2 main ways that we can get to understand the frame of reference of the other. The first way, or one way that we can look at, is active listening.
Okay.
And we've explored or just touched on that issue several times through our discussions. The main thing here is that when you actively listen to another, it's a very challenging, and it's a process. It requires of you to really park or suspend your own frame of reference, your own understanding, your ways of seeing things, your own assumptions. It means just pausing that, just for the time being, for the moment, and trying to hear and listen to the other as accurately as you can. And that's quite a process, really listening to another.
Really being able to pause your own frame and really put that to the one side and actively understanding another without is this the same way I see it or not? So really being able to not to question it at that stage.
Yes. So often we're inclined to interrupt one another, finishing one another's sentences. Even when we think we know what the other's saying, it can be quite exciting. We want to let them know, and we go ahead, finish it. So it's difficult just to really listen to another without interruption, hearing them, observing and trying to make sense of what and how they're communicating and what they're expressing, and just doing it without interruption.
It's really pausing everything and trying to understand and hear them as accurately as you possibly can.
Yes.
And it is, like you said, sometimes we think, well, yeah, we know where the person is going to, but that is an assumption, because then we're actually not in their frame, but in our own frame.
Yes. Yes, very much.
But it's actually much harder than what it sounds like.
Yes, especially socially, because socially we are trained, or there's an idea that we need to exchange, we need to give inputs, we need to comment. And so to really listen to another is actually, and can be quite unusual. So yes, it's just in that moment, just really listening, pausing one's own frame, and tuning into the frame of reference in the other by way of really listening to them.
And really, to really listen, that must be profound for the other person.
For another to really listen and to have the experience of being listened to, it is, and it can be very, very profound. There is a qualification to that. It's not only being listened to. It's something we noted in one of the earlier episodes, that listening to needs to be accurate. And the only way one can know that is if there's feedback or some kind of response, the feedback message, which shows that I've been understood, that I've really been seen in this moment and understood from my own frame, my own experience. So to be listened to is deeply meaningful, and it has two parts. One is actively listen to another, and the other, or the one who's really listened, has been able to feed back and show the other that there's been some meaningful or accurate understanding. And when one experiences that, that can be deeply meaningful.
I think that's such an important point, because if we don't share what we understand, how will the other person know that we actually understand their world?
Exactly, yes. We're back to we can't mind read.
We can't mind read.
And sometimes one of the challenges a therapist faces is they are actively listening, but if they don't share in some way what they had understood accurately, that's lost or can be lost. So it's that skill in both listening actively and showing that one listened actively by feeding back, and so that the other can confirm that the listening, their understanding is an accurate one.
And that's where the empathy comes from that we touched on previously.
Yes, very much.
So active listening and sharing that what they understood is really that's where empathy is, and that's how you can express empathy.
Yes. That's why empathy is so key in a therapeutic relationship, because now that we've been discussing the communication model and communication theory, empathy is and does involve very active listening and the communication of that understanding, so that the other knows that they've been listened to, the client knows they've been listened to accurately. In other words, that is actually accurate empathy. And that is very profound for a client.
And that can really mobilize them and empower them.
Yes, very much.
Okay, so that's one aspect of really understanding someone else's frame of reference. Is there other aspects to this?
That is a major way, active listening. The other way, because I said there are only really a few, it's very limited, so you could really classify it as two ways of really understanding or stepping into the frame of reference of the other. So the second one is the utilization of open-ended questions. Open-ended questions as distinct from closed-ended questions. And the reason why, well, let me before I explain that, the key here is an open-ended question is one that really is open-ended, where one can respond, the other can respond fully. Close-ended is a question that elicits specific information, and that limits how someone can respond. So the way we could think of it as an open-ended question is one where instead of focusing on myself, because every question that I ask is actually a reflection. It's like something of an arrow but pointing backwards. Like it, it shines on me. It's about my frame of reference. What time did you wake up? What did you have for breakfast? Have you seen the weather? All of these are closed-ended questions. It's not that it's not meaningful or can't be valid for the other to respond. It's that the other can't share their frame of reference. All they can do is respond to the question. That's a closed-ended question. An open-ended question shines the light on the others. It literally is open-ended, as in what's your experience, or how do you think about this, or where do I find you, or what would you like to explore? Those are all open-ended questions. Now, as I think we've touched on before, no question can ever be perfectly or completely open-ended, because it always frames the information or the discussion in a particular way, but to the extent that it's more open and invites the other to respond increasingly from their own frame of reference, that's an open-ended question.
And then you can enter more into someone else's frame and really understand it.
Yes, exactly. Every time one asks a closed-ended question, again, it's just back to the person's frame of reference who asked the question. And so I don't leave my own frame of reference by asking a closed end. But the moment it's open-ended, the other can express something of their frame. And as long as I now actively listen and just suspend or pause my own frame of reference, now I can tune into the frame of reference of the other.
Sure, I think this is so meaningful of actually understanding how to enter someone else's frame of reference. And it relates to two of the major aspects is the active listening and portraying the active listening.
Yes.
And then the second one is with open-ended questions to really understand where the other person is at and what they are experiencing. So I think these two, it creates so much clarity on how to enter someone else's frame of reference.
Yeah, I think you've summarized it beautifully. And the key here is once you can understand these two processes or parts about how to achieve frame of reference or understand the frame of reference of the other, now you can utilize and respond meaningfully. But again, we noted that it's a shared frame of reference. So that's just one half of the cycle. At some point, the receiver, of course, has to now move into sender role and send into receiver role, so both can understand each other's frames of reference.
In that it's in that links back to couple therapy and how that is utilized. So understanding both sides, both half of the circle.
Yes, that's one of the key understandings or developments when we're training and looking at workshops and any kind of training around couple therapy. It's a core part of it is understanding this model and recognize when you're working with a couple that they've got a shared, they need to establish a shared frame of reference before meaningful therapeutic work can occur. So yes, core concept.
Core concept. Okay, this is so meaningful to look at it, and I'm mindful of our next episode as well. And one of the things that we touched on it a little bit today, but is looking at how does understanding someone else's frame of reference, how does that assist a therapist in a person-centered approach? So looking forward to working with that and looking at that with you.
Yes, I look forward to that as well.